Well, cotton has been on such a tear, it's performing on par with a stock we talk about quite a bit here, Apple. Check out this chart. Both cotton and Apple are up almost 300% since March of 2009. But clearly the issue with cotton is not so much a demand issue as it is a supply issue. The question now is how will that translate to retailers as well as consumers as those costs are passed along? And joining us now, we've got Lori Wachs. She started Cross-Ledge Investments just recently. She's got a vast knowledge of retail, all that is retail. She does invest in retailers like, I say Lululemon, but some people say Lululemon, Urban Outfitters, as well as Dick's Sporting Goods. And she has followed consumer-oriented stocks since 1992 when she joined Delaware Investments. Lori, great to have you joining us live from Philadelphia. You were back on the show in November, cotton prices were already heating up back then. But when do you think we're actually going to see those materials costs be passed on to consumers?
Interesting question, because, well, these companies tend to book things 6 to 9 months out. So they still felt that they had wiggle room for the important back half of next year as it relates to placing holiday orders in terms of how much cotton prices would be up. We knew in the first half of the year they were only going to be up a few percentage points, but now we're hearing for the back half they've kind of run out of time to place these orders, and they're going to see pricing pressures of about 10 to 20%, well in excess of anything we've seen in over a decade.
All right, so tell me this. Which retail stocks are going to be sort of the winners and the losers here? I mean, presumably there are some companies that can actually pass these costs on to consumers and some that aren't so successful. I know Polo, Urban Outfitters, these are companies that haven't seen their gross margins as compressed as several others like Gap and J. Crew.
Right. And when we look at those margins, that was how promotional did things get. Looking forward, it's going to be who has a highly differentiated product that they can potentially pass some higher costs on to their consumer, who again hasn't really dealt with apparel inflation. So companies that are in more commodity type of products or that have a much higher percentage of cotton in the product, so they won't be able to resource into some other kinds of materials. So denim manufacturers are really going to be hurt. And if you look at a company like VF Corp that has 25% of their business in denim-based product, cotton is just such a higher percent of the cost of goods sold, they won't really have anywhere to hide, and they sell a lot of that into the mass channel, which doesn't have a lot of pricing power. If you look to the other side of the coin, if you look at a company like Urban Outfitters or Lululemon, they have a lot, their product is very differentiated, and they should, again, be able to pass some of this on. They will have pricing power with their customer.
All right, so let me ask you, just sort of bottom line, which companies do you like? It's not necessarily just those companies in the high end. It's not necessarily just companies that can actually sell sort of non-cotton type clothing.
Right. So again, we're looking for companies that they talk about. If we look at what the elasticity of demand is going to be into the back half, the companies that have to depend on passing prices on, we don't know if the customer is going to pay up for that basic cotton tee or for denim. But companies like Lululemon and Urban Outfitters, I keep coming back to them.
But you also like Walmart, which I would think falls into that category of companies that can't pass their costs on to customers.
Oh, we don't own Walmart, and we haven't owned that for some time, so I'm not sure how that.
Okay, you don't have it in the portfolio.
No, that's definitely in someone else's portfolio, because I agree, Walmart is going to have a difficult time, although they're so enormous, they will probably be able to pass a bunch of this back onto their suppliers. But it all comes back to the fashion newness that these companies are able to put in. And again, at these specialty apparel companies, it's a much smaller piece of their cost of good, the product, the raw material cost. So it's a lot of the embellishment that they're putting into the product, the wash, the product design, and so they won't be nearly as affected, and they can source into other types of materials.
All right, Lori, thanks so much for joining us. Wish we had more time. We'll have to have you back on. Lori Wachs from Cross-Ledge Investments talking about retail stocks and the impact of rising cotton prices.